All right, you know what? We'll start. If she comes, and if not, I'll figure it out. So I just wanted to kind of talk about briefly like the last section of the myth of Sisyphus, because I think it kind of ties in nicely this concept of perspective that we've been talking about in the context of all the readings so far in the semester. Um, so who can kind of tell me if they remember what's Sisyphus' punishment? What does he have to do for eternity?
Doesn't he have to he escapes two of his punishments to the gods, and then his final punishment from Zeus is that he has to like hold up a boulder all the way up a hill, and then it will roll down. It's like forever. Like he'll never get it up to the top. It'll roll down, and he starts again, and he starts again.
Right, like he's got to push his boulder up the mountain. Once it gets to the top, it rolls back down, and he has to do it forever. Right? It's a punishment for it's an eternal punishment. And then Camus, the writer of the essay, kind of says there's nothing worse than futile labor. Right, and futile is a fancy way of saying pointless. Right, there's like no objective to that goal. Right, and then what Camus does is he kind of relates Sisyphus's punishment to what it means to be like a human being, right? Because we all have to live through life doing these things, and then seemingly at the end of life, especially if you don't hold a religious or a spiritual perspective, you get to the end and it can seem like it's all for nothing, right? And there's probably not a worse feeling than that. Like maybe you guys, has anyone ever had like an assignment that your teacher gave you it was just to give you something to do?
Literally.
You kind of hate them afterwards for it, right?
Yes.
Yeah, like, and something interesting about humans is we're very goal oriented. We like to feel like there's a point towards something. Right, so Sisyphus relates nicely to what it means to be humans, especially modern humans, in the context of maybe not having a connection to a religion. But then there's a moment in Sisyphus's walk that interests Camus, right? So if we start at the top of the chat box, he says, "You have already grasped that Sisyphus is the absurd hero." And then he makes an interesting point. He says, "He is as much through his passions as through his torture," right? In other words, he exists as much through the things that he's passionate about as he does through his torture, right? So in other words, his struggle defines him. And I think that's a really relatable concept, right? If you're not enjoying the predicament you're in, at least you can identify with your struggle, right? And this also ties into our conversation we talked about last week about rap music and just hip hop in general. Taking the struggle and making something positive out of it, right? Not just positive, but actually making meaning, right? And we could even get into the whole interesting idea of how rap actually created like a language within English, right? We call it ebonics or slang, whatever. These people invented words, and that's really interesting, right? There's an enormous amount of creativity going on there, and that comes through struggle and only through struggle, right? And then if we go on, he says, so he describes Sisyphus, once the rock goes down the mountain, there's an interesting moment for Sisyphus. It says, at the very end of his long effort, measured by skyless space and time without depth, the purpose is achieved, right? That's the rock balancing momentarily at the tip. That's you guys handing in your homework, feeling good about it, only to wake up to Blackboard the next day and there's a whole new shitload of homework for you guys to do. Right? So just when you feel like you've accomplished something, you go back down to zero again. Right? It says, then Sisyphus watches the stone rush down in a few moments toward the lower world when he will have to push it up again. And then it says it's during that return when he's walking down the mountain that Sisyphus interests us. He says, a face that toils so close to stones is already stone itself. I see that man going back down with a heavy yet measured step toward the torment which he will never know the end. And then he says that hour is the hour of consciousness, right? And that's where I want us to think about for a second, right? Because when he's working, when he's pushing the rock up the mountain, he's not thinking, right? When the rock goes down the mountain, he has a moment to think. And this is where the humanity comes in, right? Because when you're conscious, you have the ability to choose what you pay attention to, right? It says, at each of these moments when he leaves the heights and gradually sinks towards the layers of the gods, he is superior to his fate. He is stronger than his rock. Well, why do you guys think Camus says that about him? Why, when he's walking down the mountain, can he, even if it's just for one moment, how could he be superior to his fate at that moment? If we think about consciousness and paying attention, and then maybe relate it to moments where you've worked really hard, that moment of breathing space for you when you get a rest, why is that an important moment for humans?
I guess it feels meaning in things because he was talking about how Sisyphus, like, the rock goes down and he looks at the sky and he looks at the sunset and he like notices the things around him. And like when you have like been focused on like one thing, like I don't know, it made me think about like when example if you have like testing or something like for a full week and then you get a break, you immediately want to go outside. You immediately want to go do something because you want to go observe and pay attention to something that's not that.
Yeah,
And I think like
yeah.
that moment is like the same thing.
I think you're absolutely right, right? And it's not cliche to say that at all, right? And I think maybe we take it for granted, but when you've really worked hard, like you said, if it's a week of testing, even just meeting a friend for coffee can seem like the greatest feeling in the world, right? Or going for a walk with your dog, or taking a walk with a family member or a friend. Something so simple like that can really not just enhance the moment with beauty, but it actually makes you go back into testing. If you have to test the next week, it gives you a whole new fresh perspective, right? And if you kind of think about what humans have done, we've kind of carved out this work week and then we have 2 days off. There's something even beautiful about that, right? Because we push this rock up a mountain and then we know it's going to go back down again, right? We all know Monday morning's coming. But if you really work hard through Monday and Friday, there's something beautiful about those 2 days off. And if you even think about it from the religious perspective, how interesting is it that Christianity is deemed one day, and even Judaism has done this, one day is a day for pure rest, right? And they make it so to tell you, hey, God took a day off. You think you're going to work harder than God, right? And it's like this moment. And even Camus says it, right? If the descent is sometimes performed in sorrow, which most of the time it is, right? When you're doing something miserable, it's hard to get out of that mindset. And even if it's a 0.1%, it can also take place in joy, right? Maybe you've worked hard and you're going home from work, you get on the train or you get into your car and your favorite song comes on, right? And this goes into Maya's concept last week about um, the objective truth of music, right? How it can immediately uplift you and transcend the moment you're in, right? And even if it's just for 3 minutes, that 3 minutes of joy can ripple into the future. And it's almost unquantifiable. You don't know how much that 3 minutes will help you into the future, right? Or how much that those 3 minutes of joy changes your perspective going forward. Right? I think that's a really great moment in this essay, right? Because it says, even if 99% of the time you're struggling, life seems pointless, the work you do seems like it's not only never ending, but in the big scheme of things, it seems like it's not making much of a difference. There's moments throughout those times that are going to be sublime if you choose to pay attention. If you choose, like Maya said, to focus on the sunset or to focus on laughter with a friend or a meal with loved ones, even if those are just moments that we can repeat through life, those might be the only things we have worth living for. Right? So what that does is it infuses those moments also with eternity. Because if you can really maximize that moment, it carries on into the future with you. Kind of like a piggy bank. It's like a savings account for happiness. And I think that's really beautiful. Any last comments or words or questions about this essay? Anybody want to say anything?
I just thought it was I thought the essay was really interesting in talking about what existence is, and I feel like it's really funny because you could take several points out of it. Like you could see that life is meaningless, or that we do have mundane tasks in our lives. Like our life is a mundane task, but there are really cool specks of enjoyment, happiness, and you know uh, regularity in certain things. And I still do think that humans enjoy the regularity at some point. Um, for example, going to college or going to other things, it usually causes anxiety or it causes other things because you're moving out of regularity. So as much as people say I don't like holding up this boulder, there's something about routine that is so innately human. I feel like it makes you feel grounded, and I
Mm-hmm.
feel like it kind of gives a peace that helps you get through your day.
Yeah, right. That's humans are in a really interesting position because we look around the natural world and we're absolutely terrified because what is the natural world? It's formlessness, right? The monkeys and spiders, they don't wake up at 7 o'clock, turn off the alarm clock, have a cup of coffee. There is no routine, right? In other words, we crave order because it makes us safe and it makes us feel really good. And if you really think about it, there's also an interesting paradox going on. When you have a routine, you're able to kind of improvise in that routine and meaning can be infused into anything. Right? So it's like placing limits on your creativity, right? What is freedom? Freedom is essentially anarchy. Unless you place some limits on that freedom, then the human doesn't really know how to act because then anything is on the table, right? So we kind of operate in between these two parallels of craving freedom but also craving routine. That's why in every new situation you find yourself, what do you immediately do? You start to kind of order the world around you in a familiar way, right? And so what we would say, especially from a Camus perspective, the existentialist perspective, is that if you make that order, within the order could be an infinite amount of meaning if you choose to look at it that way. Because it might seem philosophical to say, oh, life is meaningless, but it's actually the easiest thought to have. It's really not even thinking at all. It's like the classic 18-year-old life sucks perspective, right? But the real work comes from making meaning because then it requires you as an individual to have some agency with how you look at and experience the world, right? And that's where the real fun comes in because no matter how you look at it, you're here, right? And from the existentialist perspective, suicide is one of the great philosophical questions. Why shouldn't I kill myself? And maybe that is a question we all confront sooner or later. But if you're not going to, then you might as well make the most out of this life, right? And maybe that even sounds cliche for us to say, but you can try it as an experiment. You go out into the world, or you go out into the things or the people you interact with, and if you can remind yourself that you choose what to pay attention to, then the things that annoy you, you can easily kind of shake off. And then you can redirect your attention to something that's either funny or ironic or beautiful, but you can change the meaning. and it's hard work, and it might only be for moments throughout your life, but it's definitely worth attempting. Because whether you like it or not, especially because medicine is getting so good, all of us in this chat are probably going to be on Earth for like 93 years. That's a long fucking time to be miserable. Right? So it's like, why not try to infuse meaning in everything? Right? And I mean, and the more you think about that, the kind of more your ego dissolves, and then you kind of get into this connection with everything. Right? Because what does science tell us? Stars die, they fall onto the earth, and that essentially was what created life. Right? So you're a star, you're a piece of a star. We're connected to everything that's around us. And that is enough meaning right there to kind of get you through the day, because everywhere you go, you see aspects of yourself rather than looking around and seeing strangers. Right? That's the real beauty. Is like this whole game of life is inherently connected. And we're all just kind of echoes of each other. All right, you guys want to talk about the perspective playlist at all? Does anybody have any questions about that? So I decided to give you guys some more time. I know some of you turned it in already. If you did and you feel confident about it, you're good to go. You can leave it at that. If you turned it in and you're not that confident about it, you can rework on it. I changed the date on Blackboard to Monday. So if you didn't hand it in yet, I gave you guys some more time.
So for the intro, are we just like listing this, like we're introducing what songs basically the playlist we chose?
Yeah, kind of the playlist you chose and like the moods or the perspectives that are kind of surrounding all of them and how they relate to you or something like that.
Okay.
If you're choosing songs that don't have lyrics, like let's say you choose a classical song, maybe focus on breaking down the title if it has a title. And if it doesn't have a title or a title that you can interpret, what you can do with a song without lyrics is just try to focus on the tone, right? What is the tone? And what kind of a mood is it emitting from you when you think about it? Right, so maybe if it's jazz or classical, something like that, just focus on the tone and how it relates to mood. All right, so I changed the date to Monday. So you guys have, it'll be due the 12th. And between now and then, if anybody wants me to look at any piece of their writing or anything like that, you can email me. And you can also email my Google account. I'm going to put it right here because you can share a doc with me, and that way I can write comments directly to you guys.
This is for, like, we can email you regarding the playlist, right?
Yeah, but even going forward, if you have writing you want me to look at, just you can send it there and share a document with me. All right. Anybody have any other questions? All right, before we go, I want to go around the room. I want you guys to share one song with me that you're thinking about writing about. It's time for me to judge your taste in music.
I can go first.
Yeah, you don't even have to say it. You can just enter it in the chat box. So everybody
Okay.
just type the song, one song that you're thinking about doing, even if you're on the fence about it. Different kind of human, Aurora, cool. All at once, Jack Johnson. Ooh, people still listen to Jack? Good for you, Zoe. Ooh, a very strong hell yes. Normal girl, SZA.
Yes. I'm sorry.
Ballad, great. Clouded by Brent Faiyaz. Ooh, Circle. That's a great album. Candace. Black Licorice by this is a great name. Peach Pit. Beyonce. Ooh, Nas. There we go. Ooh, 2 people are doing Speak. Self Care is another great song by Mac Miller. What a tragic death, right? And it's kind of crazy if you listen to those 2 last albums he made. It's almost like he kind of knew something was going on with them. Right? They're kind of very telling to kind of his mental state. Did we get everybody? Did David go? Yeah, he's doing. What album is that from, David?
It's a relatively new song.
Is that the new Nas album?
Yeah, it's from the new album.
Great.
I love
was
Brent
hoping
Faiyaz.
Huh?
I love Brent Faiyaz. Whoever's in there. Yes.
And we didn't get any Lil Fap, Lil Wop, Lil Baby, no Lil.
I chose Polo G.
Yes.
Chose Polo G.
Yeah, Wishing for a Hero.
What song?
Wishing for a Hero.
Wishing for a Hero by Polo G. Let me see that.
He's underrated.
So underrated.
I have a question. When does a rapper stop becoming Lil? Is it like around 34, 35?
Well, Lil Wayne is like, I don't know how old. He looks like very old, so I don't know.
His birthday
He's like slowly
just passed.
shriveling up. Yeah, but he's not Lil anymore. Isn't he just Wheezy?
I think he goes by both.
Man, is he interesting. All right, so if nobody has any questions, we can end a little early today. You guys can get back to bed. And remember, if you want to send me any writing to look at, you could email it to my to the Google account. That way we can share a doc and I can comment directly. All right, if not, no more questions. I'll see you guys next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.